Hi guys, welcome on our YouTube channel, and today we are going to talk about multilingual email marketing with Anna Levitin. Anna is a member of the Women of Email Association and a speaker of MailCon, InboxExpo and Litmus Live. Anna, maybe you add something about you? Do you want to share something?
Sure. First of all, thank you so much for inviting me. It's such a pleasure to speak about different languages. I personally super interested in the topic. Anna Levitin. I lead email and marketing ops at a company called Powtoon. Powtoon is a visual communication platform. In other words, Powtoon helps users to create engaging presentation and learning courses. And throughout my career, I worked in several companies, especially like hands-on emails, and run campaigns with 15 different languages. And now I love talking at conferences and webinars and sessions like this about different languages, about B2C, B2B, and I will be here. Will be happy to share my expertise here.
And also discuss that you has huge experience in multilingual email marketing, and also you know a lot of interesting information about different cultures and religions and different continents, maybe.
Well, yeah, I spent 7 years of my life studying cultural anthropology and ethnology. I have MA degree in history. And at some point, I have this aha moment in my life when I realized that actually everything what I've been doing in my university, it's very related to retention marketing. For example, I went to the expeditions, I talked to different people, and I tried to segment basically based on their tradition and ritual. So it's exactly the same what I'm doing here at Powtoon, trying to segment users based on their customer behavior. Yeah. And regarding the work experience, I worked in e-commerce company with personalized jewelry and financial companies. And we worked with different countries in Europe, Australia, US, and so on.
That's really interesting. So let's start. And I think my first question will be about conversation, about engagement, about any metrics. So has going multilingual affected your business somehow?
Yeah, definitely. I think it's very important to communicate with user using the same language. And even if there is no opportunity to create completely the whole content in a different language, it's worth at least to try a little bit. For example, as I mentioned here at Powtoon, our tool is in English, and the main language that we use to communicate with our users is English as well. But we do have partners that create webinars and workshops in different languages. So whenever I invite my users to participate in these webinars, either it's French, Spanish, Finnish language, I tried, to twist a copy a little bit to add something in their local language, at least a subject line or the name of webinar, even though, as I said, that the product is in English. So the way I see the conversion in this case is the conversion from sent emails to registration actually is higher.
And how many languages you had?
As I said, at Powtoon, we mainly use English, a little bit Spanish, some French, but at the companies I worked previously, we had around 15 languages, including right to left languages, which I guess we're going to speak a little bit later, which is super challenging, like Hebrew, Arabic. And it's such a pleasure to work with the different languages and cultures.
Wow, it's 15 different languages. And what types of messages you were sending?
So basically, I think that it's not enough, just to create one promotional email in local languages, and all the transactional are in English. So whenever we released a new market, new language. So not only website copy or legal terms and conditions were translated, but also all transactional emails, all header, footer, because view in browser, like probably everyone will understand what it means in English, but still it doesn't look professional when it's part of this, like in English and part, let's say, in French. So we send transactional, triggered, and promotional emails in local languages.
And also with different social media, I think, with different banners, yeah?
Yeah.
It's totally different emails for each country, yeah?
Depends on the country. We even had a separate like Instagram page or Facebook page. So yeah, that's a lot to QA, I would say.
Is it possible for you to run email marketing in English only? If yes, why do you run it in a few languages?
I mean, to run in one language is better than do nothing. So obviously, if there is no such an opportunity to run in several, but I think we are now all about the personalization. And whenever I talk with another email marketing geeks, it's not about subject line. It's more about personalization, the user experience, the proper segmentation. And I think language is a super important part of this segmentation and important part of building a trust between brand and user.
That's cool. And which translation methods do you use? And why? I don't know. Maybe we add some hints for our users. But maybe describe some methods. Maybe you use just one or two methods.
So in majority of companies I worked, I use a segmentation method, which means that basically for each language and country sometimes, we created a different email campaign. So it's completely different HTML, different image, banner, because sometimes even the company name is pronounced different, and the actual, like the LTD that register in this country also has a different name. So on one hand, it's a manual process. It's like for each language, it's different campaign, as I said, and it's a different schedule, different upload. Everything is separately, but on other hand, it's pretty much powerful in terms of quick adjustments and quick changes, and also legally wise. Like, I mean, there are different T's and C's in each country, and it helps to include, the proper link or to translate the a disclaimer, to add a proper disclaimer.
And in your case, your users have just one language, or maybe they can have two languages, for example, and you can send them two different emails or not.
So mainly we assign like one language for a person. And as I said, we don't have like here at Powtoon a lot of different languages. Mainly it's English, Spanish, and French. So the majority of communication are in English, and I think it's very important to give a user an opportunity. Like, for example, I know that majority of the brands, they have a preference center where you can choose which updates you would like to receive. Either it's a product news or how-to or discount. So I guess it's a great idea to do the same with language, like on which language you would like to use in your communication, because it might be that your IP is located in Finland, but you're English speaker actually. So it's a lot of different situations.
And also you say that you are really professional marketer with different culture. Maybe you have some I know you have some examples about different emails with different events, with different promotionals. Can you describe maybe some interesting of them?
So I would say that I guess everyone who works in e-commerce will understand my pain. There is low season, there is high season, and Christmas time is always a high season for majority of e-commerce brands. And it's very challenging to track all the events during the Christmas, especially if you're working with a physical product, as I said, e-commerce. And basically every Christmas when I worked in a commerce company, we had like daily, even like twice a day catch-ups, because we need to be very aligned with delivery dates. And this is actually, leads me to the previous question, like what method of translation we used. And in this case, when delivery dates are changing like constantly for each country, for every of them, and it's just easier to change a specific email campaign rather than, find a dynamic element when it's built, like everything pre-built.
And also, can you add more details about this translation method, how it works, or how it worked in previous companies?
Like step by step, just right. So basically, it's a long process. I mean, because generally speaking, I would like to plan all my email activities a quarter ahead. So in the beginning of the quarter, I already have planned what I'm going to send in 3 months. So this is the first step. It's far from translation part, but we will come there. Usually it's a briefing with creative team, marketing team. So we come up with different ideas based on the calendar. Also, it's very important to be in line with the specific events that happening in this country. So the next step is be in line with their website content, because what I see, and I guess it might be like relevant for people who are watching this webinar, sometimes the content and the creative approach in email and on the website, it's just not the same. So it's very important to be aligned with like website team. Either it's a marketing team or acquisition team. Choose all events, choose what is relevant for each country. For example, just again as an example, we just celebrated Mother Day in the UK, while in the US it's going to be on the first Sunday of May, so almost like in a month. So define each event for each country, and the next step is basically to start working on the content. So we had several content writers preparing the content, and sometimes we separated, actually not sometimes, in majority of the situation, British English and American English, because in these cases, whenever you write like on the native language, you can use idioms, you can, twist, spice a little bit the copy, but for the copy that will be translated to different languages, we actually use more, I would say, plain language without idioms. So this is the next step, and then all the text go into translation, and this is actually very this moment that I really advise to everyone, like automate if it's possible. In the company where I worked, we used Jira. So whenever I had like a special, like a separate ticket for email campaign, I already included which languages I would like to include this campaign. So whenever the first initial content is ready, I can release the subtasks, and it will be automatically redirected to a specific translator, to translate for a specific language. So this at least saved me a little bit, time. So I was not doing this manually. And then basically I track each campaign and each language in Jira, and you can use Monday, Redmine, whatever, Asana, whatever task management you use. So once translation is back from initial agency we worked with, this time internal native speakers, they review the content, and sometimes they twist the copy, but it's very important just to adjust the mistakes and not to completely rewrite the copy and come up with a different promotion than it was in the beginning. So this the second step, and then of course we are sending, once the HTML file is ready, we are sending one more time the whole preview with image, because we used a lot of text on the image in the local language. So this is the final step when managers reviewing the wording in HTML file, and we as a team QAing the more a technical part. That's a lot. I guess I covered everything, but
also you mentioned writers and marketers. Can you describe your team structure? How many people in your team?
Mm-hmm. So as I said, I worked in different sizes of the company. I worked in a company 20 people, 400 people. So I would say it's never the structure is always different in each company. But from my experience, the best is to structure your team in the following way. So there will be, especially when you work with several languages, there should be an HTML person that hands-on creating and adjusting HTML and QA in it. There should be a project manager. This is the one who create tickets, who check the deadlines, communicate with other departments. And actually, this is part of I really like in email marketing and retention part of the marketing, that we communicate with each and every department in the company, either it's developers or designers. And yeah, it's really nice. Also, it's email person, email specialist, email manager, whoever actually upload the file, make sure the UTM's right, make sure that it's trackable. Of course, it's design team. Either it's one designer or several designers that are working on the project, and internal QA, internal native speakers that helps to QA the text.
That's cool. And how do you manage to have control over the approval process, quality control, bulk updates? You describe some of these points, but maybe you add something.
Yeah, so this is the thing, that sometimes it's fine to lose control because no one house is perfect, and it's challenging. But what really helped me is to track every single change in Jira. Every single change should be documented. Of course, it might be some communication in a Slack, in Teams, whatever you use, but because especially in e-commerce, there might be such a situation that you reuse this content or you reuse this specific promotion in the next year. So in order to track all the changes that have been made in email, in HTML, or in design, it's very important to transfer it to the Jira ticket. And in generally, my advice, especially for small teams, that email marketers, they on hands on everything, on HTML, on translation, also designing. It's very important to translate everything, let's say every request you receive from another team or internally to the ticket. So whenever there is a conversation, oh, let's send another promotion, oh, let's create this one, let's create that one. Okay, there is a task that's in a backlog, and let's review it when we have time for that. Not sure it's answered your question. Yes, talk about it.
And also, can you describe how do you test your letters before you send them? Because you have a lot of points, you need to check all of them. How do you control it?
Yeah, so basically there is a checklist, just a simple Excel where you go step by step. And it's also very helpful for the new team members. So, they're not overwhelmed, they know exactly what they need to check. So it goes from the subject line to copy body, pre-header, all the links, again, T's and C's, that it goes to right support page, that it's right social media, that actually unsubscribe link is working, leads to the preference center, that view in browser. So each and every link, UTMs, it's very important to make sure that it's trackable actually, and you can understand where the user, where conversion comes from. And I always use few people, like even, grab someone in the office or just send a preview by Slack, just to have another pair of eyes to make sure that it's there is no mistakes or something that I might miss. But usually it's like technical QA links, wording QA, and the final one, how it actually looks in different ISPs, on the font, dark mode, desktop, different sizes.
Yeah, that's cool. And how much time does it take you to translate an email into one single language? Or maybe you can say how much time does it take to translate into all languages?
So it pretty much depends on the scope of work. As I mentioned, I also work in a financial company, and every email was very time sensitive. So whenever there was some market news, some changes, we really wanted to be the first one to update our users. So in this case, this is something not an ordinary. So in this case, I can just go straight to the native speaker and ask them to translate some few paragraphs. So again, if there was a native speaker in this language on the team, but normally I would say that one email at least requires 1 day to translate, because the process goes like this. There is an initial translation, there is another translator who does QA on the agency side, and then only after the second QA, it actually goes to the client, to our side. And the client, my team, we're building HTML, and then it goes to the internal QA. And when we're speaking about the translating, let's say, all Black Friday campaign for 15, 13, 12 languages, it's really something that needs to be planned, as I said, quarter prior the event. And also what helped us, for example, is to have basically a spreadsheet where we had all common used phrases. If it's e-commerce, it's sales, free delivery, 20% off, or something like that. So it's also helped us to save time and be consistent with language, with a translation that we use for majority of the languages.
And if you want to add a new language, would it be easy for you? What about websites, some landing pages or surveys, do you translate them into all necessary languages?
Yes, I think it's very, like, first of all, it's a big project and it's need to be considered that it requires, like, oftentimes I see, the small pieces that are not translated. For example, great landing page, webinar, guide, and then I click to register, and there is a pop-up form that is not translated to the language that uses English, and it's just okay, like, it's different experience. So it's not something that can be done quickly. It's usually a process, and I do believe that it's very important to translate all content. And maybe, and this is what we done in the previous company where I worked, it's not necessary to translate all landing pages and all content in the very beginning. So maybe start like main page, some important pieces, some legal pieces, and then just as you go, start to build it, because otherwise it might take like 3-6 months, even a year to translate the whole site. But again, I'm like super believe that consistency and the same language is the key.
And what tools do you use, for example, for translation?
So this was the part that my colleagues usually been dealing with. So I know there is a tool, MimoQ, that helps to upload the copy, actually upload the HTML with English copy, and then translators will only see the text without the code, and they will translate a part of the text, and I will receive it within HTML. So of course, it requires some manual adjustments, as I said, because it might be like right to left, left to right language, but still the HTML file was pretty clean.
What tools do you use, or maybe services, to analyze the performance of email campaigns?
So usually we use the analytical tool of ESP that we use, to track open rate, click-through rate. Yeah, we're still tracking that. I know that we cannot rely 100%, unfortunately. Also, we are tracking it in the Google Analytics, like if we're talking about purchase event or any other conversion that should be on a specific landing page. Also, it might be Tableau or any other BI tool. And for example, at Powtoon, we do have a lot of webinars. So for me, it's very important that the final conversion is the registration and like attendance of webinars. So also, we use like Zoom or another tool for webinars to see their performance.
And is there a way AI could help you out? For example, have you tested the chat GPT or not? Maybe it can help you.
Oh, I'm super old style, I'm very like classy. I haven't tested it for email purposes, even though, all the LinkedIn now talking about that. So again, I'm a little bit old fashioned in that. I wouldn't trust like 100%, to create without any proofreading, but it's a nice opportunity, especially for non-native English speakers like myself, to create a copy body and just go over this to get some inspiration, get some ideas for the subject line. But I think what is in what like AI can help, not necessarily ChatGPT, but generally like the approach, is that, as I said, sometimes the wording is different. Landing page that was created 3 years ago, and nowadays they might have different wording, different language, different like sort of communicational approach. So it would be nice to have AI that can just run over the all landing pages and identify where this different wording been used.
Maybe some other localization problems. Have you noticed so far some of them, and how do you deal with them?
I remember actually in the previous company I used Striper, and I was super happy with that too. And some of the content we were sending in Arabic language, and we use a countdown there, and because it's right to left. So I remember that the like time, like hours, days, they were flipped, they were like mirrored actually. But it's good that they're always like been a native speakers that helped me to catch these things. So yeah, right to left always like a tricky thing. Also in terms of like a localization and culture in general, for example, when I used to work in e-commerce company, I realized that in Friday 13, as we know, like the scary day, it's not the same for Italy. In Italy, if I'm not mistaken, they have like Friday 13, no, Friday 17th. And also in some Spanish-speaking countries, there is Tuesday 13. So it's very, very, very specific, like for each country. Also, I already mentioned Mother Day, that is different in the UK and in the States. And also the same with Australia. Like it's a Christmas, but it's really like the hot season in Australia. So you can't really, put Santa Claus on your banner or put a lot of snow because it's not relevant for Australia at the moment. And another story, it's actually not from my email experience. Many years ago, I used to work in an advertising agency, and I was very involved in TV commercial, in shooting process. And our client, there was an idea of shooting that based on like, there is like wedding idea, and everything was agreed on, props, actors, costumes, everything settled. And then we got an email from client that they would like to run this TV commercial not only in Europe but also in Central Asia, which has completely different like culture, habits, culture approach. So at that moment I was super happy that I had this education as a cultural anthropologist. And basically the night before the shooting we were adjusting some costumes to make it maybe some like more conservative, maybe more understandable for the different audience. So what I want to say that sometimes clients or brands themselves, they don't realize how changing a small, like tiny part of campaign, of email, can really affect the way how users understand and how they translate in their culture.
My last question. Maybe some hidden problems, and how do you deal with them?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, as I already mentioned, there are different culture rules. Like, for example, when I just started to work with French language and I don't speak it, I was very surprised why there is a space before the explanation mark or colon. And I was always thinking that this is a mistake. So I try to tend to remove the space until I really talk to native speakers and then they explain me. So whenever I adjusted HTML, I need to remember, okay, that in Spanish, like I have this extra space, and because of this space, I need to keep this colon, for example, explanation mark, on the same line. So I use this like AMP space to keep the code together. So yeah, it's also something that you only can learn with experience. Regarding the time and dates, of course, it's different the way how we write it for the US and in Europe, for example. And also one of the hidden things that some ISP, like for example Yahoo or Outlook, they tend to hyperlink the date, so you can add it into your calendar, which is super cool feature and I like it. But the only thing that they change the color of the link. So sometimes, especially when your background is not like plain white, so the link itself, especially like on mobile, you just cannot see it. So in this case, it's less connected to localization and languages, but it's important to add this space characters that will help to keep all the date the same color. Another thing is translation on images. I guess all of us like experience that there is the whole email on the local language, and then the banner says something completely like in a different language. So I think it's super important to keep even like the phrases like Merry Christmas that everyone's understand, or Happy Birthday in a local language. And it leads me, back to like personalization and segmentation. We marketers tend to use like a lot of dynamic elements, first name here, job title, and based on like onboarding of the user. But if the basic like a language is not adjusted for user, I don't think like it's really valuable. And in this case, actually, cycle back on what I just said, that might be a huge spreadsheet that you use like year over year with all the necessary phrases, like common, again, like as a happy birthday, sale, or whatever like you use in your promotional or like even product updates email.
That's so interesting. That's so cool. Is there a question you'd like to be asked but wasn't asked in this interview? Maybe you want to add something.
I just want to say that oftentimes I ask like why I chose emails, and I think I slightly like I mentioned this a little bit in the beginning, that I think emails, it's such a unique field. First of all, we have like amazing community, very supportive and very, very friendly. And the second thing is in email team, we, as I said, communicate with each and every department in the team, even with sales, with design, with developers, with finance department, because they love our reports and everything, and dashboards as well. So I think that there is like a special character traits that should be in each email person, like that sees their career, in emails, and natural curiosity, because like I personally, I speak several languages and I always want to learn more, like in another one. So I think like email field, it's a great combination for people like with analytical mind, but also full of creative ideas.
Thank you so much. It was really great conversation. I don't know what to add, and from the bottom of my heart, really thank you so much. And one more time, it was Anna Levitin. You can find her at the link below. You feel free to ask any questions about email marketing, about multilingual campaigns, or maybe you just want to talk with Anna.
My pleasure.
Thank you so much.
To chat with other folks, and if you have your input on multilingual, please send it over to me. Like I would love to learn from you.